What if I told you that the biggest fight of your life isn't against a person, but against a whisper? Not the whisper of a stranger. Not the voice of critics. But the one inside your own head, the one that questions your every move. Because the battle you've been avoiding, it's not between you and the world. It's between you and you. Let's talk about it. You might think your biggest obstacle is your job, or your past, or the lack of time, money, or support. But what if the real enemy isn't out there at all? What if it's right here, living rent-free inside your mind? It's not your boss, not the economy, not even the people who've doubted you. It's the quieter version of you, the one that second guesses, that scrolls instead of starts, that whispers, maybe later, when deep down, you know it should be right now. That inner version of you isn't cruel. It's just scared. Scared of failure. Scared of change. Scared of becoming someone bigger, bolder, and harder to control. And this battle, it isn't fought with fists or rage. It's fought in moments so small, most people miss them. Every time you hit snooze. Every time you talk yourself out of starting. Every excuse. Every hesitation. Every maybe next week. That's the real fight. But here's what most people never realize. Self-belief isn't something you're born with. It's not gifted. It's built. Belief in yourself is forged, like steel, under pressure. And just like a muscle, it only grows with resistance. You push. You strain. You show up again. And then one day, you realize the voice of doubt is quieter than it used to be. That you've grown louder than your fear. That's when you stop being someone who hopes, and start becoming someone who knows. So what does it take to win this war with the weaker version of you? It takes ruthless commitment. It takes doing the hard thing when no one's watching. It takes realizing that no one is coming to save you. But that's okay, because you don't need saving. You need to believe. Believe that you are capable, that you are resilient, that you are more powerful than your fear. This isn't the story of motivation. This isn't about hype. This is the story of self-belief, of you versus you. And the moment you understand that, is the moment everything changes. So take a breath, and let's begin. You've just realized this is a battle of belief. But here's the question that defines everything from here on out. Will you conquer the doubts within, or will they conquer you? Chapter 1, The Enemy Within. The Stoics didn't sugarcoat life. They didn't preach positivity without substance. They faced reality. And they spoke the truth. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that one line, it strips everything down to the bone. Because the storm you fear the most, the chaos that feels overwhelming, most of it doesn't come from the outside. It's born in your own mind. Not from the situation, but from your interpretation of it. Your fear, your doubt, your procrastination. They aren't forces of nature. They're choices. They're mental habits. And if left unchecked, they become your chains. Imagine this, a blacksmith, hammer in hand, striking a blade over and over, not to break it, but to shape it. Now imagine you are the blade. The doubt, that's the fire. The struggle, that's the hammer. Every moment you want to give up is pressure. Every delay, every whisper of "you can't do this," that's heat. But here's the truth, steel doesn't break under heat. It becomes stronger. And neither will you, unless you stop mid-forge. The enemy within doesn't march in with flags and warnings. It doesn't yell. It waits. It waits until you're tired. Until things feel good enough. It waits until your vision is blurry, your purpose is shaky, and your self-discipline is on autopilot. And then it whispers, "You've done enough today. Just one more scroll. Just a little rest. You'll start tomorrow." But deep down, you know that's not true. You know you haven't earned that comfort, not yet. The inner enemy is clever. It doesn't hit when life hits. It shows up in the calm after the chaos. When you're relaxed. When your urgency fades. It strikes not in the crisis, but in the quiet. The Stoics had a name for this kind of warfare, not of the body, but of the mind. They believed, if you don't master your mind, Your mind will master you. And that kind of mastery, it isn't something you earn once. It's something you train for daily, like sharpening a sword, again and again and again. Because the enemy isn't one voice, it's a crowd, a chorus of excuses, perfectly disguised as logic. Voices that sound like reason, but are rooted in fear. And the longer you listen to them, the more they shape your behavior, the more they shape your identity. So what can you do? You fight back, not with rage, but with awareness. You don't silence the voices by yelling over them. You silence them with action. Consistent, quiet, disciplined action. Every day, every decision, one choice at a time. Because this enemy isn't strong. It only pretends to be. And the moment you recognize it, is the moment it starts to lose its grip. You've named the enemy. You've seen how it hides in silence, in stillness, in comfort. But knowing it exists is only the beginning. Because the next step is choosing to face it. And here's the brutal truth. The most dangerous opponent is the one you don't know you're fighting. And for most people, that opponent is themselves. They don't see the war raging inside. They don't recognize that their hesitation, their fear, their distractions aren't just bad habits. They're strategies. Strategies used by the inner critic to keep them small. And the worst part? They believe that voice is truth. They never stop to ask, is this really me talking? Or is it something I've been conditioned to believe? That's why this next lesson is simple in words, but a mountain in practice. You must become your own observer, not a passive one, not a bystander, a relentless, curious, brutally honest witness of your own mind. Think of yourself like a detective, cross-examining your own thoughts like they're suspects in a crime. You're in the middle of a busy day. Stress is piling up. You feel yourself reaching for your phone, scrolling aimlessly, or you're about to hit snooze again. That's the moment. That's where the growth happens. You pause, and you interrogate the moment like it's a courtroom. Why am I thinking this? What's underneath this urge? Am I tired? Or just avoiding discomfort? Am I being realistic, or am I afraid to stretch? This is the skill most people never develop, because it's not glamorous. It's not loud or impressive. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's uncomfortable. But it's everything. Because when you shine light on your mental blind spots, on the corners of your thoughts where you let yourself off the hook, that's when things begin to shift. You start to notice the little lies you tell yourself. It's just not the right time. I'll start next week. I've had a long day. I deserve a break. And suddenly, you realize those aren't truths. They're traps. The inner critic doesn't always sound harsh. In fact, its most dangerous form is when it sounds reasonable. It shows up dressed as caution, as logic, as taking it slow. But it's not protecting you. It's caging you. And your job now is to see through the mask. So identify the voices, the one that distracts, the one that delays, the one that doubts, the one that deceives. Give them names if you must. Call them out, because once they have names, they lose their power. This is the practice of awareness. It's not something you do once and move on. It's daily, hourly, sometimes minute by minute. And the more you practice, the more you build clarity. And with clarity comes power. So what comes after awareness? What does it look like to break free from the cycle, and reclaim control? Give it a name if you must. Call it resistance. Call it fear. Call it comfort. Call it the whisperer, the one that doesn't yell, but leans in quietly and persuades you back into the shadows, where it's safe, where you don't have to try. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize it when it speaks, because it will speak. Not in full sentences, not in clear warnings, but in subtle nudges, in invisible pulls, in thoughts that sound like wisdom, but are really fear dressed as reason. And if you're not careful, if you don't train yourself to notice it, you'll follow that voice every time, and never realize it was never you speaking. So develop the instinct, sharpen the awareness, train your mental reflexes to catch that voice mid-sentence, and interrogate it like a lie detector on high alert. Ask, is this truth, or is this fear trying to sound rational again? Understand this, You are not here to silence that voice forever. You can't. It's part of you, a reflection of every scar you carry, every past failure, every moment you felt helpless. It's not your enemy, it's your history. And like a shadow at sunset, it will always follow you. But here's the key. You don't need to destroy it. You just need to stop obeying it. That's how you win, not in a single cinematic act of rebellion, not in one triumphant breakthrough moment, but in the quiet, in the small, in the daily choices, when no one's watching, when it's just you and the mirror. You win in the second you get out of bed when comfort begs you to stay. You win in the moment you start the task. Not because you're motivated, but because you're disciplined. You win when you hear the voice and keep moving anyway. Because every time you do that, every time you lean into action instead of avoidance, you lay another brick in the foundation of a powerful identity. The identity of someone who doesn't need to feel brave to act with courage. The identity of someone who leads themselves. Not once. Not when it's easy. But always. So here's the challenge. The next time you feel hesitation rise, pause. Ask yourself, is this hesitation coming from the real world? Or from me? Is it logic? Or is it fear? Then write it down. Start a journal. Not for the sake of productivity. Not for goals or to-do lists. But for clarity. Record the moments when doubt creeps in. Capture the triggers. Write down the excuses. Shine light into the places where hesitation hides. Because the more you write, the more you see. And the more you see, the less power it holds. This is how you shift from reacting to responding, from following to leading. And that brings us to the next truth, a truth the Stoics understood better than anyone. Self-belief isn't built in comfort. It's built in the furnace of repetition and resilience. Chapter 2, The Weight of Choice. You may not control the events, but you can control how you react to them. Epictetus. It's a truth so simple, so powerful, and yet, it slips right through the cracks of our noisy, overstimulated minds. Because here's the secret most people never stop long enough to realize: every single day, you are given a choice. Not just once, not twice, but again and again, moment by moment, you are standing at a crossroads. And that choice? It's not neutral. It's the battlefield of you versus you. Each morning, before your feet even touch the floor, the first quiet war begins. Not out there. Not at work. Not in your inbox. But in the most sacred and vulnerable arena of all, your mind. In that first fragile moment, when your body is still heavy with sleep and your thoughts are unguarded, the first skirmish is already underway. Will you reach for your phone, flooding your still waking brain with other people's lives, other people's opinions, other people's noise? Or will you pause, breathe, and make the first decision of the day yours? Because that's the point. Every choice is a declaration. You're either handing your focus away or reclaiming it. You're either stepping toward growth, or sleepwalking back into survival mode. And that's what most people forget. They think choices are made only at life's big turning points, the job offers, the breakups, the leap of faith moments. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that the smallest decisions, the ones we dismiss as routine, are where identity is built. You are not sculpted in the spotlight. You are sculpted in the quiet, in the micro decisions no one sees. So let's be honest. You can choose to numb yourself, to reach for the comfort food, the endless scrolling, the pointless arguments, the drama that doesn't belong to you. You can entertain boredom with cheap dopamine hits, fast laughs, instant validation, artificial highs that leave you emptier than before. Or you can lean into the discomfort of growth. You can sit with the silence, with your goals, with your truth. You can choose the harder path, the one that doesn't feel good in the moment but builds something real over time. And yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's exhausting. But it's also the only way forward. You can surrender to fear. Let your mind spiral into hesitation. Let your imagination twist every what-if into paralysis. Let anxiety convince you that doing nothing is safer. Or you can move anyway. You can say, yes, I'm afraid, but I act anyway. Yes, I'm uncertain, But I move anyway, because fear doesn't disappear with more thinking, it dissolves with action. And every action you take, no matter how small, is casting a vote for the person you're becoming. So the real question is, what are you choosing? What are you tolerating? And what identity are you reinforcing? Moment by moment. Because the truth is this: discipline isn't built in grand resolutions. It's built in tiny battles, tiny victories. And each one of those victories starts the same way, with a single choice. So as you move through your day, ask yourself, am I choosing growth? Or escape? Am I choosing purpose? Or distraction? Am I reacting? Or deciding? Because the most powerful thing you can do is not to control everything that happens to you. That's impossible. The most powerful thing you can do is choose your response. Or you can choose to act in spite of the fear. You can choose to take one small, brave step forward, even when everything inside you is screaming to freeze, to run, to hide. When your breath shortens and your thoughts spiral, that's when the choice matters most. Because in that precise moment, you are not just choosing what to do, you're choosing who to be. And every single micro decision you make, whether to stay, or to leave, to begin, or to delay, to push forward, or retreat, each one becomes a thread, quietly woven into the fabric of your character. Most people, if they're honest, want a strong mind, without lifting the mental weight of responsibility. They crave confidence, but they run from conflict. They want personal power, without the pressure that forges it. They want growth, but without growing pains. They want to feel unstoppable, while still running from the parts of themselves they haven't faced yet. They dream of harvesting resilience, but they never plant the seeds, never stay long enough to let the roots take hold. But here's the hard truth: choice is not free. It never was. Choice is a burden, a weight you must carry, not just once, but every single day. And the heavier the responsibility you're willing to lift, the stronger you become beneath its pressure. If, and only if, you have the courage to carry it. This is the paradox. And it's as brutal as it is true. The harder the choices, the easier the life. The easier the choices, the harder the life. Comfort now, regret later. Discipline now, freedom later. The Stoics didn't waste energy complaining about the hand they were dealt. They didn't curse the sky, or sink into self-pity. They understood something far more valuable: that life's randomness is indifferent to your preferences. That fate doesn't negotiate. That fortune doesn't care if you had a bad day or the perfect plan. So they made a decision, not to waste time weeping over the cards, but to master the game with whatever hand they held. To focus not on what they had, but how they played it. Because control was never about the circumstance. It was always about the response. They knew, the real power is never in the conditions. It's in the composition of the person facing them. And so, every moment you choose discipline over distraction, focus over chaos, effort over ease, you win a small, nearly invisible battle within. These wins might not look like much. They don't come with applause. They won't trend or go viral. But they matter, because like drops of water carving stone, each small act of discipline leaves a mark. Each decision to rise instead of retreat cuts a deeper groove. And over time, those grooves become who you are. Not a fluke, not an accident, but a person forged by repetition, by effort, by choice. So ask yourself now, when no one is watching, when no one is pushing, what are your choices creating in you? And with that question echoing in your mind every time you say, I'll do it tomorrow, you're not just rescheduling a task. You're casting a vote, silently, but powerfully, for the version of yourself that gives in. You're handing control to the voice that craves ease, the whisper that clings to comfort, the part of you that prefers safety over strength, excuses over execution. And make no mistake, that voice doesn't disappear when you listen to it. It grows stronger, because every delay, every justification, every maybe later, is a deposit in the account of mediocrity. You are voting, again and again, to stay small, to stay stuck, to defer your own greatness, as if you have forever to step into it. But every time you say, I'll do it now. Even when you're tired, even when you're unmotivated, even when everything in you begs to wait. You are casting a vote for the strongest version of yourself. You're saying, I don't serve my feelings. I command my choices. You become a person of action, not a person of wishes. You are no longer at the mercy of moods. You are led by intention. This is how resilience is built. Not through emotion, but repetition. You're laying bricks, one by one, in the fortress of your future. Each now is a stone. Each act of follow-through, a reinforcement. Each moment of discomfort, a moment where you refuse to negotiate with weakness. So begin to see it that way. Every small decision, from the way you wake up, to the food you choose, to the tone you speak with, as a vote. Ask yourself, again and again, who am I voting for right now? The weak me, or the strong me? This simple question, asked consistently, will begin to shift your identity, not by force, but by awareness, not by motivation, but by discipline. Because here's the truth the world doesn't tell you: motivation is not reliable. It's a burst, not a battery. It flickers when you need it most. Chapter 3, Discipline over Motivation. Let's be honest, the world today is obsessed with motivation. Scroll through your feed and you'll find it everywhere: flashy quotes, 30-second reels, motivational speeches clipped to epic background music. They promise that a single line, "Never give up, push harder, you got this," will flip a switch in your brain and make you unstoppable. But the Stoics knew better. They weren't chasing sparks. They were building fires that could survive storms. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, not for the world but for himself, wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work," as a human being. Not because he felt inspired, not because he had an energy drink waiting, but because he understood that duty comes before desire. That quote isn't meant to pump you up. It's a gentle reminder, you are here to show up. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Motivation is a luxury. It shows up when the weather is good, when the mood is right, when life doesn't feel like a burden. It's like a gust of wind that fills your sail, until the skies shift and it disappears, leaving you stranded, waiting. Discipline, though, discipline is the oar in your hand when the wind dies. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it moves you, especially when nothing else will. Motivation says, I feel like it. Discipline says, it doesn't matter how I feel, I'll do it anyway. Motivation is a visitor, knocking on your door unpredictably, staying for a moment, then vanishing when you need it most. Discipline is a resident. It lives with you. It doesn't care about the rain, or the cold, or your excuses. It shows up before dawn, after heartbreak, in the silence when no one's cheering you on. And that's why it's powerful, because it belongs to you. No conditions, no applause, no waiting. This is the difference between hoping you'll rise and deciding you will. You won't win the internal war, you versus you, by wishing for better mornings, by hoping for the right song or the perfect quote to fire you up. You win it with habits, with routine, with structure built in silence and executed when no one is watching. You win it on the dull days, the days you feel nothing, when the bed is warm, the world feels heavy, and motivation is nowhere to be found. Because here's what discipline really is: it's not about punishment, it's not about restriction, it's about respect for your goals, your time, your potential. Discipline is how you show your future self that you're serious. It's how you cast votes for who you are becoming, not just once, but again and again, until that identity is undeniable. So when you wake up tomorrow, and motivation doesn't show up at your doorstep, don't wait. Pick up the oar, row. And as we turn the page, we'll explore what it truly means to build an identity that doesn't depend on emotion, but is shaped, brick by brick, through unshakable consistency. It is won not by waiting for inspiration, but by doing good, by choosing action over ease. Not just when it feels right, not just when the mood is high and the air feels electric, but especially when it doesn't. Because that's where real strength is born. True strength is forged in the absence of feeling, in the presence of resistance, in those quiet, lonely moments when no one sees you struggling, but you show up anyway. It's when the inner voice whispers, "You've done enough. Just skip it this once. Take it easy. No one will know." And yet, you rise, you show up, you take the next step forward, not because you feel like it, but because you promised yourself that you would. Real power is developed in the exact moments when your body screams for rest, but you decide to move anyway. When your muscles ache, your thoughts spiral, and your spirit feels worn down to threads. That's the moment when the battle is real. That's the moment when the war is won or lost. Here's the secret the world won't advertise. Your best self isn't born in a highlight reel. It's not sculpted during motivational highs or breakthrough moments of clarity. No, the best version of you is built quietly, in monotony, in repetition, in the invisible, thankless effort that compounds behind closed doors. It's the morning you get out of bed, when the dread feels like a boulder on your chest. It's the time you press start on the workout, when your limbs feel like lead. It's the late night you choose progress over scrolling, growth over ease, commitment over comfort. You will not always feel inspired. You will not always feel ready. Some days, you'll wake up with a fog in your brain and a knot in your chest. Your thoughts will feel heavy, like they're dragging you backwards. And the voice inside you will get louder. Take a break. Skip today. It's okay to let this one slide. That voice is not a flaw. It's not proof that you're weak. It's the very resistance you're meant to face. It's the weight you're meant to lift. Being human means waking up some days with zero motivation. It means feeling empty, confused, tired. It means experiencing doubt, fear, and emotional friction. And that's the point. Strength is not built in spite of that reality. It's built because of it. You grow when you move forward regardless of how you feel. You evolve when you act. Not because you're inspired, but because you're disciplined, because you said you would, because the person you're becoming doesn't negotiate with weakness. And from here, the path only gets steeper. Next, let's talk about how your identity itself is shaped. Not by what you believe. When you show up despite exhaustion, when you execute despite doubt, that's where transformation truly begins. Not in applause, not in grand, cinematic moments, but in the quiet, gritty defiance of your lowest days. It's when you rise, not because anyone is watching, but because you refuse to betray yourself. Because you know deep down that discipline is the highest form of self-respect. Every time you take action when your emotions scream stay down, you plant a flag, a silent declaration that says, I am the kind of person who shows up anyway. And that declaration, made in silence, without drama, without fanfare, builds trust, self-trust. The kind that doesn't depend on motivation. The kind that says, even when I feel broken, I still follow through. Even when the tank is empty, I still take the next step. And here's the secret. Self-trust is the foundation of self-belief. Not words, not affirmations, not hype or hashtags, but proof. Proof that you can rely on you. Confidence doesn't come from repeating, I'm good enough. It comes from doing the thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You earn your own respect. And that is a currency more valuable than praise, likes, or applause. The world can doubt you. People can leave you. Circumstances can collapse. But when you know, with certainty, that you will show up for yourself, that's freedom. That's unshakable power, because no one, and nothing, can take that from you. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't worship emotion. They didn't treat feeling as gospel. They believed in living by reason, the quiet, steady compass that points to truth. Even when emotion clouds the sky, they knew emotions are like waves, wild, unpredictable, crashing again and again on the shores of your mind. 1 minute, you feel confident. The next, worthless. 1 moment, energized. The next, exhausted and lost. And that's why they didn't trust emotion to lead the way. Because emotions are ancient tools. They're built to keep you safe, not to make you great. They whisper, Stay small. Take the easy route. Don't risk it. Don't work too hard. But comfort is a beautiful prison. It lures you in with softness, then locks the door with regret. Your emotions, if left unchecked, will seduce you with ease, and starve you of excellence. But your reason knows better. It knows that the path to greatness is paved with discipline, integrity, and the willingness to act, even when it's uncomfortable. So ask yourself today, are you letting your emotions make the decisions? Or are you choosing to lead yourself with reason? Because the next step isn't about how you feel, it's about who you're becoming. That kind of freedom, the kind that reshapes your life, is not found in doing what feels good in the moment. It's found in doing what must be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. That's the great paradox of personal power. True freedom isn't about escaping discipline, it's about choosing it again and again. Because your future is worth it. Your reason, that quiet inner compass, sees farther than your emotions ever could. It isn't seduced by the temporary. It looks down the line, beyond the fog of now, to what you're becoming. It whispers truth in the midst of the storm. Every decision is a seed. What are you planting today? Because the truth is, every moment of self-discipline waters the roots of your potential. Every time you delay action or make excuses, you leave those roots dry and starving. This is why reason must lead. Emotion reacts. Reason builds. Emotion panics. Reason plans. Emotion wants what feels good. Reason wants what's right. When you can consistently act from reason, not just once, not just when inspired, but every single day, regardless of the emotional turbulence inside you, that's when something shifts. That's when you move from surviving to creating, from wishing to becoming, from chasing motivation to leading with intention. That's when your actions stop being conditional and start becoming non-negotiable. So here's the shift. Don't just set goals. Set standards. Goals are dreams you hope to reach someday. Standards are rules you live by now. A goal says, I hope I'll wake up early tomorrow. A standard says, I rise at 5 a.m. no matter what. A goal says, I want to eat healthier. A standard says, I fuel my body with intention. Goals are fragile. They crumble under pressure. Standards hold firm, even on the hardest days. Because standards aren't driven by emotion, they're built on identity. Ask yourself, who do I need to become to reach the life I want? Then build your day around the habits and decisions that person lives by. This is where you move from hopeful to unshakable. And just as you begin to build momentum, just as you start acting with purpose and living with power, something dangerous sneaks in. Not pain, not failure, not fear. Chapter 4. The resistance of comfort continues. And this is where the battle intensifies. Not outwardly, but deep within. The Stoics warned us. Not because they hated pleasure, not because they found beauty distasteful or believed that joy was sin. They warned us about comfort because they saw what it slowly does to a person. Not all at once, but drip by drip, breath by breath. Comfort softens your edge, and when your edge dulls, your ability to respond to adversity, to rise in difficulty, to fight back when life demands more of you, disappears. You don't feel it at first. You barely notice it. Comfort doesn't barge in like a storm. It sneaks in like a gentle breeze. It whispers, you've earned this. You can start tomorrow. Just take it easy for today. But here's the brutal truth. Comfort is not a reward. It is a sedative. It numbs your hunger. It dims your urgency. It convinces you that growth can wait, and in doing so, it kills it. The more you allow comfort to dictate your choices, the softer you become, not just in your physical body, but in your spirit, in your mind, in your will. And a soft mind, it doesn't just bend, it collapses. It looks for the exit before it looks for the answer. It bows to pressure before it learns to endure it. It hides instead of hunting. It avoids the storm rather than walking into it to grow stronger. Comfort feeds the illusion that life should be easy, that resistance is unfair, that struggle is a punishment, when in truth, Struggle is a necessity. Life will come for you, with pain, with loss, with pressure. And it won't send a calendar invite. It won't knock politely on your door. If you've built your life on a cushion of ease, if your habits are rooted in avoidance and softness, you won't stand when the world demands you rise. This is why the battle of you versus you is not fought with fanfare. It's not a cinematic moment. It's not you standing on a stage or winning some grand reward. It happens in silence. In the private corners of your life no one else sees. It's not fought in front of a crowd. It's fought in your bedroom. In the moment your alarm rings and your hand hovers over the snooze button. It's fought in your kitchen, when you choose between fueling your body with purpose or numbing it with habit. It's fought in your office, when you decide whether to do the hard work or just look busy. These are the battlegrounds, quiet, hidden, but decisive. And every time you choose comfort over commitment, you lose a little bit of yourself. Not enough to notice at first, but enough that, over time, your sharpness becomes softness. Your focus becomes fog. So how do you fight it? How do you sharpen your mind again and reclaim that fire? Chapter 5, Voluntary Discomfort, the Discipline of Strength. It is fought in the smallest, most seemingly insignificant moments. In the decision to skip the workout, not because your body truly needs rest, but because your mind is whispering, "It's okay to stop now." It's fought in that internal negotiation, when you convince yourself you've done enough today, even though deep down, in the quiet corners of your honesty, you know you've only done enough to maintain, not to grow. It's there when you scroll aimlessly through your phone, telling yourself it's just for a few minutes. But minutes become hours, and hours become days. And before you know it, your attention span is gone, stolen by pixels and algorithms. It's fought in the moment you postpone a difficult conversation, because discomfort feels heavier than truth. So you delay, and delay again. And what should have been a moment of courage becomes a wall of silence that grows harder to climb over. It's fought in the quiet decision to let one bad day morph into a bad week, a slippery slope that begins with a single surrender and ends with you looking around, wondering how you lost control again. Comfort never shouts. It whispers. It says, "You've worked hard. You deserve this. One day off won't matter. Tomorrow will be better." But tomorrow is never guaranteed. It's not in your control. Today is. Today is your only true currency, the only moment you actually possess, and every time you trade it for ease, you pay a price you won't feel until much later. Here's the truth. Comfort is resistance in disguise. It pretends to be your friend, a warm blanket, a gentle pat on the back, a voice saying, "Be kind to yourself." But comfort is not kindness. Comfort, unchecked, is sabotage. It is not a neutral bystander. It is an active opponent, wearing the mask of care, while slowly disarming you. Not with force, but with softness. It smiles at you while it makes you weaker. Not in a way you notice. Not in a way that alarms. But in a slow, quiet, creeping erosion of your willpower, your focus, your pride. Every time you give in to it, you trade self-respect for self-soothing. You sacrifice your future potential for a fleeting moment of peace. You let go of your edge, not all at once, but inch by inch, until one day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. You wonder, when did I become this passive, this soft? Comfort is not a sanctuary. It's a trap, a velvet-lined cage that feels safe, until the walls close in and you realize you don't know how to fight anymore. But here's the good news. Just as the erosion begins with one small surrender, the rebuild begins with one small choice. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. How to escape the trap of comfort, not with dramatic rebellion, but with intentional, daily resistance. The Stoics understood something most people spend their lives avoiding, that the real battle is not against the discomfort of the world, but against the voice inside us that wants to escape it. They saw discomfort not as an enemy to fear, but as a forge to be entered willingly. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. They didn't demonize luxury or pleasure. They didn't live lives of harshness out of disdain for ease. They simply knew the danger of becoming dependent on it. Because when ease becomes your baseline, strength becomes foreign. And when comfort becomes your anchor, you forget how to swim in chaos. Comfort itself is not weakness. Dependency on it is. And that, the Stoics taught, is the root of almost all suffering. When you lean too heavily on comfort, you begin to forget how to endure. You begin to fear resistance. You start negotiating with your own discipline. I've done enough. I'll start tomorrow. This is good enough. But comfort is never satisfied with the moment. It wants your identity. And every time you let it win, you are casting a silent vote for the weaker version of you. You are giving that version the wheel, and asking it to drive your future. But here's the shift. When you begin to recognize that comfort is resistance, not a reward. Not a reward. Not self-love, but subtle sabotage, you start to reclaim power. You start to see the war clearly. That every small decision, to get up or stay in bed, to work or to wait, to engage or to escape, those aren't neutral moments. They are battles. Each choice is a brick, and you're either building your future or you're building a wall between you and it. And yes, these choices are quiet. They aren't dramatic or heroic, but they're the foundation of the person you're becoming. So start questioning the story comfort tells you, that you've done enough. That it's fine to coast, that tomorrow will be better, easier, more inspired. It won't. The only thing that makes tomorrow better is the strength you build today. And the only way to build that strength is to stop avoiding the struggle and start embracing it. Discomfort is not your enemy, it is your teacher. And every time you choose discomfort over ease, challenge over escape, you're not just proving something, you're becoming someone. Not someone who survives, someone who's unstoppable. Chapter 6, The Power of Voluntary Hardship. Practicing pain before it comes. You are choosing to become the kind of person who does not bend to the seduction of ease, but rises again and again in the face of it. And that choice, it's not loud, it's not glamorous, but it is powerful. Every hard decision, every time you say no to what's comfortable and yes to what builds you, you are laying one more brick in the fortress of your inner strength. You are preparing yourself, not for if the storms come, but for when they do. Because life guarantees adversity. That's not a threat, it's a promise. But here's the truth. You don't rise in the storm. You rise in the preparation. You rise because you've been choosing discomfort when it mattered most, when it wasn't required, but you did it anyway. That's the discipline of voluntary struggle. That's how you build a foundation so solid that not even chaos can crack it. So don't wait for the world to challenge you. Challenge yourself first. Make discomfort a daily ritual, not a punishment, but a practice of becoming. Take cold showers. Get outside and move your body. Walk, run, bike, climb. Lift heavier weights than your mind says you can. Do push-ups. Do sit-ups. Break a sweat even when you don't feel like it. And it's not just about physical strength. It's about training your will, saying no to the unnecessary indulgences, the dopamine hits that feel good in the moment, but leave you weaker afterward. It's about recognizing that the path to growth never runs through comfort, because your mind, that unshakable force you're trying to shape, grows best when your body resists ease. And now, we move deeper. We move into the very root of why this matters so much. Why this battle with comfort and ease is not just about habit, but about identity. Because your identity, who you are becoming, is everything. Let's step into it. Your identity is not etched in stone the day you're born. It's not locked in by your genetics, your past, or even the place you came from. It is fluid, malleable, and fully shaped by your willingness to rise or fall to the level of your daily choices and habits. If you constantly see yourself as weak, you will start to act weak, not because it's who you are, but because it's what you believe you are. If you tell yourself you're undisciplined, you'll behave accordingly. If you repeat the story that you're a victim, you'll move through life looking for someone to blame. But here's the empowering truth. If you choose to believe that you are unstoppable, that belief will begin to shape your reality. Your actions will align with that identity. You'll push harder, stand taller, and take risks you once thought were impossible. The lens through which you view yourself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you are the one holding that lens. Identity is not fixed. It is not a personality type. It is not your past. It is not your trauma. It is not permanent. It is shaped, constructed, brick by brick, habit by habit, decision by decision. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you lay another brick. Every time you act with integrity, when no one is watching, you reinforce your internal foundation. The stronger your bricks, the stronger your structure, the more stable your character becomes. This is why the Stoics stressed deliberate living. They didn't preach identity, they practiced it. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for the history books. He wasn't performing for praise. He wrote those words as private instructions to his own soul, as reminders of who he wanted to be. When things got hard, when the world was unfair, when the pressure mounted, his journal was a forge, a sacred space where he hammered his raw, imperfect self into something stronger, something aligned with his principles. That's the essence of identity. Not a label, not an idea, but a constant, deliberate effort to match your actions to your highest self. When you wake up tomorrow, you will face thousands of moments to vote for the kind of person you want to become. So ask yourself, what kind of identity am I building? And is it one I respect? And if you don't like the answer, that's not a reason to shrink. It's a reason to begin again, because your identity is never finished. It is a living sculpture, and every small act of discipline is one more chisel stroke, bringing the masterpiece to life. And now that we understand that identity is not something we find, but something we build, let's talk about how the environment around you either strengthens that identity or sabotages it completely. Chapter 7. Protect your environment. Even when no one is watching, even when it's not glamorous, even when your muscles ache, your mind protests, and your excuses feel justified, that's when it counts the most. Because this internal war you're in, it doesn't end with one good day. It's not over after one victory, one morning you get out of bed early, or one tough workout you complete when you didn't feel like it. No, this battle is relentless. It is ongoing, quiet, often invisible, and it does not care about applause. Identity isn't forged in a single moment of glory. It is built, layer by layer, choice by choice, habit by habit, like layers of sediment pressing down to form the very ground you stand on. It happens in the smallest of moments, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. It is shaped in the early morning silence, when the bed is warm, the world is asleep, and you rise anyway, not because you feel like it, but because you made a promise to yourself. It is shaped in the late hours of the night, when the fatigue creeps in, when quitting whispers seductively in your ear, and you choose to keep going, because your word matters more than your comfort. It is shaped in the invisible hours, when no one sees you grinding, no one praises your effort, and the only reward is knowing you are one step closer to becoming the person you said you'd be. These moments, these small, brutal acts of discipline, they are not insignificant. They are everything. This is how you become someone you respect. When you look in the mirror, not by waiting for motivation, not by seeking recognition, but by doing the hard thing, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. Because if you only act when it's easy, you'll never become someone who thrives when it's hard. So ask yourself, what are you becoming when no one is watching? What identity are you carving when the only witness is the person staring back at you? In the quiet reflection of your own soul, identity doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It doesn't declare itself in a dramatic moment. It doesn't show up with applause or fanfare. No, identity reveals itself in fragments, in tiny, quiet, almost invisible moments that most people never notice. It's shaped in the spaces between comfort and effort, in the seconds where boredom whispers, where temptation knocks, where stress builds and adversity calls your name. It's in how you respond to those moments, when you're tempted to scroll instead of study, when you want to lash out, But choose patience when everything in you screams to quit, and you take one more step forward instead. That is where identity is forged. Every single day, whether you realize it or not, you are casting a vote, a quiet ballot that says, "This is who I am becoming." When you push through resistance instead of retreating, that's a vote for strength. When you speak the truth when it would be easier to lie, that's a vote for integrity. When you do the hard thing instead of the easy one, that's a vote for excellence. And those votes, they stack, they accumulate, one by one. They begin to shape the architecture of your character. Not in a day, not in a week, but over time, like drops of rain carving through stone, like footsteps creating a trail through the wilderness. Those daily choices begin to leave a mark. They decide who you become. You either become the person you aspire to be, or the person you allowed yourself to settle for. That's the brutal truth. And the Stoics knew it well. They didn't talk about dreams or vague intentions. They talked about habits, because in the end, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, your patterns, your daily routines, your identity. It is not defined by what you say you want. It is defined by what you consistently do. That's why the real battle of you versus you isn't fought on the stage. It's fought in the shadows, in the repetition, in the discipline of showing up, again and again, even when no one else sees it. So if you want to know who you're becoming, don't look at your aspirations. Look at your habits. Look at the decisions you make when no one is watching. Look at what you do on the boring days. The tired days. The days when it doesn't feel like it matters. Because that's where identity is in motion. Not in the highlight reels, but in the grind. And if you want to build something unstoppable, you start there. Before you go to sleep tonight, don't just reflect on what you achieved. Reflect on who you were becoming. Write down 3 simple actions, not grand accomplishments, but small choices that aligned with the person you aspire to be. Not to impress anyone, not to track your wins, but to train your mind to value being over merely doing. Because identity is not built in the outcome, it's built in the intention behind your action. Chapter 6. The mirror of adversity. If identity is shaped in silence, then adversity is the mirror that makes it visible. The Stoics believed something most people spend their lives trying to avoid. Adversity doesn't break your character. It reveals it. It doesn't create weakness. It exposes whether you've been building strength. It doesn't ask what you believe. It asks you to prove it. Life will bring storms, emotional, physical, financial, relational, and they never arrive at a convenient time. They disrupt your schedule, your plans, your illusions of control. But here's the truth the Stoics understood deeply. Obstacles are not interruptions. They are the path. We don't grow in the absence of resistance. We grow because of it. Every setback, every rejection, every challenge is life handing you a mirror and asking, who are you when it's hard? Because in the arena of you versus you, adversity is the final test. It reveals whether you've just been talking about strength, or if you've actually built it. It unmasks the discipline you claim to have, or exposes the comfort you've clung to. It shows you what's real, and what's just a performance. Adversity strips away the costume. It peels back the masks. There's no audience, no applause, just you. And the raw truth of your preparation. Will you retreat, or will you rise? That's the defining moment. Not when things are smooth. Not when everything's going well, but when everything is falling apart. And no one's watching but you. Because that's the part most people miss. Adversity doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to introduce you to the version of yourself you've either ignored or neglected. But what do most people do? They wish it away. They plead for the pain to end. They pray for the storm to pass so they can return to ease. They curse the sky and say, "Why me?" But the Stoics, they said, "Why not me?" Marcus Aurelius reminded us, what stands in the way becomes the way. Not someday, not after the pain passes. Right now, in the midst of it. That setback? It's not a detour, it's your training ground. That discomfort? It's not a punishment, it's your forge. So don't run from it, lean into it, because the obstacle is not in your way. The obstacle is the way. And once you understand that, you stop waiting for life to be easier, and start preparing yourself to be stronger. Now that we've faced the truth about adversity, let's go deeper, into the mindset that makes you bulletproof. Into Chapter 7, Emotional Mastery. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not just a philosophical statement. That's a battle cry for anyone standing in the fire. Because adversity, it's not the enemy. It's not the thing derailing your progress. It is the path, the proving ground, the furnace that doesn't just test you. It transforms you. When you're hit with setbacks, when life flips everything upside down, you're not being punished, you're being revealed. It's in these moments, when no one is clapping, when no one is cheering, when no one is watching but you, that your true identity is exposed. Not the one you talk about, not the one you post about, but the one you live. Adversity doesn't ask for your speech about strength. It demands your performance of it. It doesn't care how many quotes you know. It cares whether you can stay standing when everything else has fallen. And deep down, you know this. You know that without adversity, there is no growth, no evolution, no self-respect that's been earned. Each hardship is a brutal but honest mirror, a reflection not of your desires or your dreams, but of your preparation and your principles. It strips away all decoration. It tears down the mask. And it leaves you face to face with only one question. Who are you when it's hard? Not when the spotlight is on, not when life is cooperating, but when it's dark, when the pressure's high, when the weight feels too heavy, and every part of you wants to quit. That's when you find out if your actions match your values. That's when you discover whether your standards hold, when no one's validating you, whether your discipline survives, when nothing goes to plan. Every challenge is a call to rise, to test yourself against yourself. And every time you answer that call, you don't just survive adversity, you become forged by it. Now let's go deeper, because it's not just about facing adversity. It's about mastering your emotions in the middle of it. Adversity is not just a test, it's a classroom, one where the lessons are hard, but the rewards are real. It's where you find out what discipline actually means. Not in theory, not when things are convenient, but when everything inside you screams for ease. And you choose what's right instead. It's where performance ends, and character begins. You can talk about grit, you can write about growth, but when you're stripped of comfort, when there's no shortcut, no audience, no pat on the back, who are you then? Who are you when it's hard, when there's no applause, no motivation, nothing left to prove, but everything left to build? That's when you find the truth, not the version of you built on good days, but the one forged in fatigue, in the long, quiet stretches of struggle, when you're bent, but not broken, tired, but still choosing to move. That's who you are. And here's the powerful part. That reflection in the mirror of adversity, it's not fixed. You're not trapped in it. You're handed the tools to reshape it. Every obstacle overcome, every hardship endured, every time you decide to lean forward instead of fall back, you're laying another brick in the unshakable fortress of resilience. Because greatness, it's never born in ease. It's born in the fire, in the friction, in the relentless repetition of facing what hurts, and showing up anyway. And one day, when the world throws another storm your way, you won't run, you won't flinch, because you'll remember, you've become the storm. Here's something simple, but powerful. Every time you face adversity, write it down. Not just what happened, but what it revealed about you. Were you calm or reactive? Did you avoid the challenge or meet it head on? What did it uncover about your discipline, or lack of it? That reflection, that brutal honesty, is the foundation of real transformation. Now that you've seen the power of adversity, let's explore what fuels your ability to withstand it. Because without one critical ingredient, none of it holds. Self-respect. It's not something handed to you. It's not a gift. It's not a performance. It's not found in compliments, applause, or the approval of others. It's earned. And more than that, It's earned privately, not when the spotlight is on, not when the room is full, but in the quiet corners of your life. The ones no one else ever sees. The Stoics knew this deeply. They understood that the root of true confidence isn't found in awards or attention. It is found in internal discipline, in the strength to govern yourself, even when no one's watching, when it would be so easy to let things slide. They believed that your opinion of yourself, not the opinion of others, is the ultimate measure of your worth. And that self-respect is not some abstract feeling. It is the result of countless small victories over your own comfort, your own doubt, your own distractions. Every time you tell yourself, I'll do this, and then follow through, you're not just checking off a task. You're casting a vote for the stronger, more reliable, more capable version of yourself. A vote for integrity, a vote for identity. Each of those seemingly small actions, the early morning workout, the 10 minutes of reading, the decision to face the uncomfortable conversation instead of avoiding it, they may look like nothing, but they are everything, because each action you complete is a seed planted in the deep soil of your character. And with time, those seeds grow roots, strong, deep, anchored. They form the structure of your identity. They become the foundation of your belief in yourself. But the opposite is just as true. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you tell yourself I'll do it and then don't, you erode that structure. You tear down what you worked to build. Brick by brick, layer by layer. You teach yourself something dangerous, that your word is negotiable, that your intentions don't matter, that it's okay to say something and not mean it, at least when it's just you. But here's the truth. Your word to yourself is the most sacred agreement you will ever make, and the moment you treat it casually, you fracture your foundation from within. This is why discipline isn't just about achievement, it's about respect, because the strongest form of confidence, the kind no one can shake, is built on the knowledge that you trust yourself, that when you say you'll show up, you do, even if you're tired, even if it's raining, even if no one notices. That kind of consistency, it becomes your power. So if you want to change how you feel about yourself, don't look outward. Don't wait for motivation. Look inward. Ask yourself, what kind of person keeps their word, even in private? And am I becoming that person? Now let's explore how your daily rituals, no matter how small, can anchor this discipline and elevate your sense of purpose. Chapter 8, Rituals of the Unbreakable. Let's begin. It is the foundation, the unshakable bedrock, of your self-respect, your self-belief, and your inner strength. Because here's a truth that few dare to say out loud. If you cannot trust yourself, you will always struggle to believe in yourself, and without that belief, no amount of praise, no standing ovation, no flood of compliments or social validation will ever be enough. It will all feel hollow, like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. The more you chase it, the emptier you feel. That's because external admiration means nothing. When your internal opinion is whispering, you don't follow through, and so you start to doubt. You second guess. You sabotage, not because you're incapable, but because deep down, you don't believe yourself anymore. This is why self-discipline isn't a punishment. It's not about being robotic or inflexible. It's not about shame. It's not even about perfection. It's about trust. It's about building, one moment at a time, a deep and honest relationship with yourself, based on consistent commitment to what matters most. It's the quiet, steady resolve to do what's right, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it, even when nobody will see, and no one will ever clap. The Stoics taught that to live well is to live with integrity, to align your actions with your values, not for applause, not for validation, but simply because you are watching you. And that's the audience you can never run from. You might fool the world, but you will never fool the part of you that knows the truth. Because when you lack discipline, you become vulnerable to everything, every fleeting emotion, every shiny distraction, every sugar-coated excuse. You hand over your life to your moods, your impulses, your cravings, to the chaos of circumstance, and then pretend you're not the one who gave away the keys. You drift, aimless, unanchored, telling yourself that life is just out of your hands. But it's not, because when you build discipline, you take the wheel back. You reclaim control. You move from being a passenger to the driver. You don't just set direction, you enforce it. Every time you show up, every time you follow through, you cast another vote for the version of you who keeps their word. You quiet the doubt by letting your actions speak louder than your fears. You silence the voice that says you won't follow through, because now your track record says otherwise. This is how you develop true power. Not through grand gestures, but through quiet, relentless consistency. So now, the question becomes, what rituals, what anchors, can you build into your daily life to strengthen that discipline? Chapter 8, The Prison of Comparison. Before we move forward, let's anchor this one truth. There is nothing more powerful than knowing, deep in your bones, that you will not betray yourself. That when you say, I will do this, you don't hope. You know, you follow through. That quiet knowing, the invisible consistency of keeping your promises to yourself, even when no one is watching, even when no one cares, even when there's no applause waiting at the end. That's where real self-respect is born. Not in the spotlight, not in status, but in the shadows of your own discipline. That's where confidence becomes unshakable. That's the soil where trust in yourself takes root and grows tall enough to weather any storm. So start small. Pick one promise today: a walk at sunrise, a cold shower, 5 minutes of silence, one page from a book. Whatever it is, keep your word. Let it be sacred, because that habit, done daily, is how the habit of self-respect begins to grow. But even as you build this fortress of discipline, there's a silent thief that sneaks in if you're not careful. And that thief, comparison. The Stoics warned us about this danger centuries ago. They understood something modern life has only amplified. That comparison is a prison, a cage we willingly walk into every time we let someone else's timeline become the ruler of our own worth. The moment you measure your value by what someone else has, what someone else has done, how someone else looks, you hand over your peace to forces you cannot control. You give away your serenity to timelines, choices, genetics, and luck that were never yours to begin with. It seems harmless at first. A scroll through social media, a conversation with a more successful friend, a glance at someone's curated highlight reel. But that glance grows into a shadow, and soon, your mind is whispering, you're behind. You're not enough. You should be more by now. You weren't unhappy until you compared. You weren't insecure until you looked sideways. And now, your focus has shifted outward. Your identity begins to blur. You stop measuring against your own progress, and start measuring against a moving, invisible target. Comparison is the most deceptive opponent in the war of you versus you. It disguises itself as motivation, but underneath, it's a parasite, feeding on your energy, sapping your gratitude, replacing purpose with performance. It tells you that if they're ahead, you must be behind, that their success diminishes yours, that someone else's path should have been yours. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what you must remember. No life can be lived well while looking sideways, because the moment you do, you abandon your own path. You walk away from your own race. You become a copy when you were meant to be the original. In the next section, we'll explore how to shift your gaze inward again, and how to build the kind of clarity and focus that makes you immune to the noise. Chapter 9, The Power of Presence. It convinces you, subtly, consistently, that your progress only matters if it outpaces someone else's. It whispers, if you're not ahead, you're behind. If they're winning, you're losing. And just like that, your journey, something once sacred, personal, and powerful, becomes polluted by someone else's timeline. But the Stoics reminded us, again and again, that the only comparison worth making is this: who were you yesterday? Not who your neighbor is, not who your coworker just got promoted to become, not who that stranger on the internet appears to be, with their perfect lighting and perfect captions. Just you, measured against you, because the truth is, that's the only battle you're actually in, the battle of you versus you. And it's the only race where the finish line is real. But today, in this modern world, comparison is everywhere. It's a parasite built into the very design of our digital lives. You scroll through social media and you're flooded with carefully curated highlight reels, vacations, six-figure businesses, six-pack abs, flawless skin, luxury, love, and filtered smiles. What you don't see: the debt, the doubt, the breakdowns, the countless drafts deleted before the one that went viral. And still, your brain doesn't know the difference. It just sees where you're not, what you haven't achieved. And worst of all, it begins to believe that you are behind. Behind in what? In a race you never signed up for. In a timeline that was never yours. In someone else's story that was never meant to be your script. That's not just distraction, that's distortion. But the Stoic path is different. It's clearer. It's quieter. It doesn't require applause. It simply asks this: did you do the work today? Are you closing the gap between who you are and who you could become? Did you move even 1 inch closer to the standard you've set for yourself? That's the measure. That's the only scoreboard that counts. And every single moment you spend comparing yourself to someone else is a moment wasted in the only battle that actually matters. You versus you. The mirror doesn't lie. And neither do your habits. Up next, we'll explore how to redirect your focus, reclaim your attention, and finally step fully back into the only race worth running, your own. The Stoics believed in a radical truth, one so simple it often gets overlooked: you are responsible for everything within your control, and nothing else. Let that sink in. This idea, so quiet and unassuming, is the cornerstone of personal power. It is the weapon that separates the strong from the fragile. It is the line in the sand between those who live freely and those who live imprisoned by excuses. In the battle of you versus you, ownership is the sword and the shield and the armor. You cannot control what life throws at you. You can't control the economy. You can't control the weather, the traffic, or the injustice in someone else's heart. You cannot force the world to treat you fairly, and trying will only exhaust you. But you can control how you show up. You can control the effort you give, the thoughts you entertain, the decisions you make. You can take charge of your energy, your response, and the story you choose to tell yourself when things fall apart. That's not just responsibility, that's freedom. Because the moment you take ownership, you stop handing your power to people, problems, and circumstances that were never meant to hold it. You stop saying, I can't because of them. I'm stuck because of this. If only the world was different. And instead, you begin saying, this happened, but here's how I'm responding. This challenge is mine, and so is the solution. I don't control the storm, but I control the sail. Most people will never do this. They will live their whole lives trapped in the illusion of powerlessness. They'll believe life happens to them, not through them. They'll wake up each day carrying invisible chains, convinced that the world owes them something it never promised. They will complain, criticize, and collapse, without ever realizing the truth. You don't need control over the world. You only need control over yourself. That's where the Stoics planted their flag. Not in fantasy, not in entitlement, but in discipline, accountability, and relentless internal focus. So ask yourself, what are you blaming? Who are you waiting for to fix your life? What have you given away that you were always meant to hold? Because the moment you take ownership, the chains fall off. The world stops dictating your direction, and you start writing your own map. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how to build that map, with your own 2 hands, not by waiting, not by wishing, but by taking consistent, courageous action. Chapter 10. The Unbreakable Standard. Most people, when life pushes them into a corner, reach for the easiest explanation they can find. They blame their circumstances. They blame the people around them. They blame their bad luck, their childhood, their boss, the economy, or the way they were raised. They convince themselves that the cards they were dealt are the reason they're stuck. They say things like, if only life were fair. If only people treated me better. If only I had more luck, more time, more help. Then, Then, they believed they'd finally be happy, fulfilled, free. But the Stoics saw right through that lie. They knew that victimhood is easy. Blame is effortless. It asks nothing of you. It demands no courage, no change, and no responsibility. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Because blame feels like relief. It disguises itself as comfort. It lets you feel safe in your weakness because it gives you a reason to stay small, a reason to avoid discomfort, a reason to never grow. But every time you reach for blame, every time you say this is someone else's fault, you are handing over your power. You're reinforcing the story that you are helpless, that you are at the mercy of the external world, that your life is not your own, that your future belongs to chance or circumstance, not to you. And what most people don't realize, what they never stop to question, is that this illusion of powerlessness is self-created. The prison they're stuck in wasn't built by the world. It wasn't built by fate, or failure, or misfortune. It was built by their own thoughts, brick by brick, excuse by excuse, delay by delay. The walls are erected through a refusal to accept responsibility. The chains, forged in every moment they looked away from the mirror and said, "This isn't on me." But here's the brutal truth, it is. And as long as you don't see that, as long as you keep pointing outward instead of inward, you will stay stuck, waiting, wishing, blaming. You will spend your entire life hoping the storm will pass, never realizing you were meant to become the storm. Because freedom, the real kind, the kind that nothing can take from you, doesn't come from comfort. It doesn't come from control. It comes from ownership. The Stoics understood that ownership isn't just about what you do. It's about how you think. It's about reclaiming authority over your inner world, even when the outer world is chaos. It's about saying, I can't control what happens, but I can control how I meet it. I can control me. And that mindset, that moment of radical ownership, that's what separates those who wait for freedom from those who create it. Let's pick up where we left off. You now know what ownership means, not just as a mindset, but as a way of living. You understand that waiting for the world to change is a trap. That real power is taking responsibility for what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your standards, and letting go of the rest. But here's the truth no one wants to hear: there is no finish line. There is no mountaintop moment where the voices in your head fall silent. There is no day you wake up and suddenly never feel doubt, fear, or temptation again. There is no final victory in the battle of you versus you, because this battle never ends. Even when you've built momentum, even when you've achieved success, even when your confidence feels high and your routines are rock solid, the enemy within doesn't die. It adapts, it evolves, it waits, it watches you in your victories, just as it watched you in your defeats. And sometimes, it gets even smarter. It starts sounding like reason. It starts dressing up as humility. It says, take it easy. You've done enough. Maybe you're pushing too hard. Or the most dangerous lie of all, you've made it. But that's not when the battle ends. That's when it gets quiet. And quiet is where the most dangerous form of self-sabotage lives. You see, comfort is not the opposite of struggle. It is the evolution of it. And your old enemies, procrastination, excuses, fear, don't disappear when you grow. They just change their disguises. So what's the answer? You don't try to win the war once and for all. You commit to showing up every single day, like it's day one, because it is. Every morning, you are given the chance to decide who you are, not in theory, not in fantasy, but in action. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. And if those standards aren't rock solid, forged through repetition and resolve, then the enemy within will find its way back in. The Stoics never promised a finish line. They never claimed that enlightenment was a final state. What they preached, through the grit of Epictetus and the writings of Marcus Aurelius, was practice. Daily, relentless, brutal, honest practice. They taught that the true battle of life isn't external. It's not you against the world. It's not you against the critics. It's always been, and will always be, you against yourself. And once you understand that, Once you stop fighting the illusion of a finish line and start embracing the beauty of the process, the battle becomes something else entirely. It becomes your purpose. So as we bring this journey full circle, from ownership to discipline to identity and back again, ask yourself, what kind of warrior do I want to be? Because this isn't about crushing your weaknesses one time. It's about rising every day. Even when you're tired. Even when you've already fallen. Especially then there is no destination where doubt disappears. No magical summit where struggle vanishes. And you're crowned with permanent confidence. The battle of you versus you is eternal. Not because you're broken. Not because something is wrong with you. But because you're human. You were designed to wrestle with yourself, not by accident, but by nature. To face fear. To face weakness. To face distraction. Temptation. Self-sabotage, over and over again. And that cycle? That constant inattention between who you are and who you could be. That's not a bug in the system. That is the system. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world gave it a name. They knew life isn't a straight upward climb toward perfection. It's not a single sprint. It's an endless series of laps, stumbles, corrections, adjustments, a rhythm of rise and fall, expansion and contraction, fire and ash. You are not failing because the battle keeps returning. You are evolving because it does. There is no shame in being knocked down. There is only meaning in whether or not you stand up again. Each day, you're called back to that same battlefield, not because you haven't grown, but because you're still growing, still building, still becoming. You will never fully silence the inner critic. You will never erase fear or permanently remove self-doubt. But you can disarm them. You can redefine your relationship with them. You begin to see them not as enemies, but as training partners. You stop asking why they show up, and instead ask, what can I learn from them today? Because every time fear rises, you get to rise higher. Every time self-doubt whispers, you get to speak back with action. Every time the weaker voice says give up, you get to say, watch me go anyway. The Stoics taught that the path of strength is not paved with perfection, but with practice, discipline, repetition, return. Victory isn't a single, shining moment. It isn't a trophy, a post, or a standing ovation. Victory is a way of living. It's the willingness to wake up every day and face yourself, to meet the voice that wants to quit and choose not to. It's in the moment where no one's watching, when your mind offers an easy way out, and you whisper back, not today. And that is the kind of victory that reshapes your life. That is what defines the unbreakable version of you. So if you're still fighting, if you're still showing up, you're not losing, you're becoming. It is the decision to rise when every part of you screams for rest. To take one more step when your legs feel heavy with defeat. To speak the hard truth, especially when silence would be easier, more comfortable, more acceptable. It is the quiet courage to turn inward, to stare yourself down with radical honesty, and say, this is who I've been, but it is not who I have to remain. That moment, that daily choice, is not a punishment. It is not a flaw in your journey. It is your training ground. It is the arena where grit is forged, where weakness is confronted, not condemned, where strength is earned, not inherited. And each time you step into that ring, you are not failing, you are becoming. The battle of you versus you is the most important war you will ever fight, because it is the only one you face every single day. Not once, not just during moments of crisis or decision, but from the moment you wake to the moment you rest your head, and in the countless quiet decisions in between. This isn't a single duel with a tidy ending. There is no final boss, no sudden retirement from the fight. It is a lifelong campaign, a war fought in the micro-decisions of your daily life. Will you rise or retreat, push forward or give in, respond with purpose or react with fear? And when you finally start to win this battle, not by perfection, but by consistency, you unlock a strength no one can take from you. Not the world, not your critics, not even your past, because the storms will come. Life will rage like a hurricane around you, tearing down the fragile, the untrained, the untested. But not you. You won't crumble, you won't fold, because your foundation was forged in fire. You will bend, yes, but you will not break. Let them whisper, let them shout, let them try to define you from the sidelines. But they cannot shake a soul that has learned to stand tall in its own truth. The unbreakable ones are not those who were never tested. They are those who were tested repeatedly, and showed up anyway. So if you're still in the fight, if you're still choosing to show up, even when no one is watching, then you are already becoming something rare, something powerful. You are becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be. And that, you will meet their noise with silence. Not because you are indifferent, but because you have already won the argument within. You no longer need to prove your worth to the world, because you've proven it to yourself. In the hardest moments, in the quietest battles, the obstacles will still rise, towering and terrifying, just as they always have. But you will move through them. Not because they vanish, but because you outgrow them. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Through every gritty decision, every silent choice to rise instead of retreat, you transformed. You became stronger in the struggle, sharper in the storm, and calmer in the chaos. Your transformation didn't arrive all at once. It was carved slowly, deliberately, through 1,000 unseen choices. It was built in the mornings when you got up despite the dread, in the evenings when you reflected instead of numbing, in the moments when giving up whispered sweetly, but you stood firm anyway. And now, looking back, you'll realize that the critics, the chaos, the storm, they were never the real enemy. They were mirrors, reflections of the fight within, because this was always the battlefield. Doubt versus action, fear versus courage, weakness versus will, and again, you chose to rise. You didn't wait for perfection. You didn't wait for permission. You chose movement over paralysis. You chose to win the most important war ever waged. You versus you. And when that truth sinks in, when you stop waiting for the finish line, when you no longer look for the moment it all becomes easy, you'll realize the most powerful truth of all. You were never meant to arrive. There is no summit, no trophy, no final moment where everything makes perfect sense, and the voice of doubt goes silent forever. There is no flawless peak where you'll raise your arms and declare, "I've made it," because that moment never comes. It was never about reaching the top. It was never about arriving. It was always about the process, the forging, the becoming, this battle, the one you fight each morning before your feet touch the ground. It was meant to shape you endlessly. Each time you rise, each time you silence the voice of weakness, and choose strength instead, you are being carved, molded, sculpted into someone greater. The person you are today, that's just the foundation. Tomorrow, you build again, and the next day, again, not because you're not enough, but because you are capable of more. You are not a broken thing to be fixed. You are a force, a living, breathing testament to the power of choosing growth over comfort. You are a work in progress, not because you're flawed, but because you were born to expand, to evolve, to ascend, again and again. And when you finally accept that truth, when you stop resisting the grind, and instead lean into it with full force, you'll realize something few ever do. The endless fight isn't your burden, it is your freedom. It is your daily invitation to live fully, to engage completely, to wake up every morning with fire in your chest and thunder in your bones, knowing this day is yours to win. This fight is yours to enter, not because you must, but because you can, because you get to, because the only true end is stagnation, the only real failure is complacency, the only true defeat is surrender. And that is not your path. Your path is to rise again, and again, and again, not because life demands it, but because you refuse to stay down. So let this be your daily oath. Let it be the whisper that becomes your roar. Today, I will win the battle within. Write it down, say it out loud, etch it into your bones, and then, live it. Decision by decision, moment by moment, day after day. Because that's where greatness is built. Not in noise, but in the quiet victory of choosing strength, over and over, even when no one is watching. And that's what makes this journey so profound. You were not meant to arrive. You were meant to evolve, to sharpen, to stretch, to stumble, and rise again, to fall, and rise again, to repeat that cycle until the version of you that once seemed impossible becomes the only version you'll ever accept. The battle was never meant to be won once. It was meant to be fought every day, and with every round. You rise stronger, not because the fight is over, but because you are no longer afraid of it.